Sheikh Omar Al-Fayez was the wealthy groom admired for his charm. Aisha Khan was the young bride who believed she had found her fairy tale ending. And Mariam, the first wife hidden away in a London mansion, was the secret that would turn a wedding night into a nightmare. What began as a glamorous union of love and luxury ended in betrayal, violence, and murder. Welcome to Secret of Murder, where we explore the dark side of human nature and stories that shock communities around the world. I am your host, and today we are diving deep into the case that rooked the USA community in Toronto to Canada. If you are new here, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, because we upload new true crime content every day. Trust me, you would not miss what unfolds in this story. So make sure you match until the very end. The city of London glowed with celebration on the evening of Sheikh Omar Al-Fayez's wedding. Guests filled the grand ballroom of an exclusive Mayfair hotel, their laughter echoing beneath crystal chandeliers that shimmered with 1,000 lights. Every detail was flawless, from the cascading floral arrangements to the gold-trimmed dinnerware that gleamed under the soft glow of candles. For Aisha Khan, the bride, it felt like a dream come true. She had grown up hearing stories of fairy tale romances, but never imagined hers would be written in such dazzling fashion. Her white gown sparkled as she moved gracefully across the floor, her veil flowing like a river of silk. To her family and friends, she looked radiant, the very image of happiness and hope. Omar, her new husband, stood tall and proud at her side, his tailored suit and confident presence commanding admiration from every corner of the room. Guests whispered about his wealth and influence, about the fortune he had built through international business, and about his mysterious past that seemed almost too perfect to question. The couple posed for photographs, their smiles wide and convincing, yet behind the flashes of cameras there lingered a strange sense of distance in Omar's eyes, as though part of him was elsewhere. No one noticed, for the night belonged to spectacle and joy. Glasses clinked, music swelled, and the air was thick with the scent of roses and luxury perfumes. From the outside, it was a wedding that promised a lifetime of bliss, but deep within the walls of the celebration, shadows already stirred. A beautiful beginning was unfolding, yet hidden beneath the glitter lay secrets that would soon shatter everything the bride believed to be true. Omar Al-Fayez was a man who seemed to embody success. Tall, composed, and always immaculately dressed, he carried himself with the calm assurance of someone accustomed to admiration. At the wedding, he spoke politely to guests, offering short but carefully chosen words that made him appear both charming and reserved. Yet those who paid close attention noticed how little he revealed about himself. His conversations rarely touched upon his past, his family, or the years before he entered London's social circles. It was as if he had appeared suddenly from nowhere, with wealth and status already secured. The mystery surrounding him only added to his allure. People wondered about the vast fortune he had built, whispered about his rumored ties to oil investments in the Middle East, and speculated on how he managed to keep his personal life guarded so tightly. Even those closest to Aisha admitted they knew very little about the man she had married. He had always kept their meetings brief, his explanations vague, his schedule unpredictable. Despite this, his generosity and sophistication silenced most doubts. For Aisha, love had filled in the spaces left by unanswered questions. She trusted him, believing his privacy was a sign of dignity rather than deception. But beneath the polished surface, cracks were waiting to show. Omar's London estate was spoken of in passing, yet he never allowed outsiders to visit. Drivers delivered guests only to the gates, never beyond. It was a place that seemed off-limits, cloaked in secrecy despite its grandeur. To many, this seemed unusual, but the brilliance of the wedding night distracted everyone from asking further. What was hidden behind those locked doors remained unknown, and that silence carried more weight than anyone realized. Among the many gifts presented that night, one stood out in a way Aisha could not fully understand. Wrapped in velvet and handed to her in private by Omar himself, it was not the kind of glittering necklace or jeweled ring she had expected. Instead, nestled in the small box lay an ornate golden key. Its surface was engraved with intricate patterns, twisting vines and tiny symbols that seemed almost ancient. Omar told her, in his calm manner, that it was a token of trust, something meant only for her. He explained no further, only assuring her it opened a special place in his London mansion. Aisha felt flattered, imagining it might be a gesture of intimacy, perhaps a room prepared as a sanctuary for her alone. She tucked the key away carefully, thinking little of it as the night of celebration carried on. Later, when the music had faded and the last guests departed, the quiet of the mansion became overwhelming. Aisha wandered through the grand corridors, the golden key heavy in her palm. Her curiosity urged her to test it, to see what gift it truly unlocked. She expected perhaps a study or a chamber filled with treasures, a surprise arranged by her new husband. When she turned the key in the lock, however, the truth startled her. It did not open a small private room as she imagined. Instead, a hidden panel shifted aside, revealing a narrow passage descending into darkness. A faint draft carried the scent of something unfamiliar, a mix of perfume and polished wood. Her pulse quickened. She hesitated, standing at the threshold of a place clearly not meant to be found so easily. The wedding night had already taken an unexpected turn, and the key had opened more than a door. The passage stretched out before Aisha like a tunnel carved from secrecy itself. The walls were lined with smooth stone, colder and darker than the rest of the mansion, and the faint sound of her footsteps echoed as she moved hesitantly forward. A dim light glimmered from somewhere ahead, though its source was hidden around a bend. With every step, her heart pounded louder, her mind wrestling between the thrill of discovery and the unease of trespassing into something forbidden. The air carried an unmistakable scent of perfume, delicate yet recent, as though someone had only moments ago passed through the corridor. That subtle fragrance unsettled her. Why would such a passage smell of another presence when she had only just arrived in this house as a bride? The narrow walkway eventually came to an end, where a door stood tall and locked. The key she had been given did not fit its mechanism, leaving her stranded just outside whatever secrets it guarded. She pressed her ear against the wooden surface and froze. Behind the barrier, muffled sounds drifted through. At first it was faint, almost imagined, but soon she realized it was laughter, light, feminine, and disturbingly familiar in tone. Aisha's body tensed as her thoughts swirled in panic. Who was there? Why had Omar never spoken of this hidden place? She clutched the golden key tighter, its once beautiful weight now feeling like a chain pulling her deeper into something dangerous. Fear overwhelmed her curiosity, and with trembling steps she retreated back through the corridor, desperate to return to the safety of her suite. Yet even as she climbed upward, she knew the echoes of that laughter would follow her. A shadow of suspicion had been planted, and it could no longer be ignored. The silence of the suite did little to calm Aisha's restless mind. She lay in the grand bed surrounded by roses, yet the memory of that hidden corridor and the laughter behind the locked door would not release her. Hours passed, the city outside quieting into the stillness of night, but her thoughts only grew louder. Curiosity gnawed at her like a persistent wound. She tried to convince herself it was nothing more than staff working late, or perhaps her imagination twisted by exhaustion. Yet the perfume in the corridor had been real, and the sound of laughter had been far too clear. When the clock crept past midnight, she could no longer resist. Slipping from the bed, she retrieved the golden key and tiptoed back toward the hidden panel. This time, the door at the end of the passage was not fully sealed. A sliver of light shone through the gap, casting a faint line across the stone floor. Holding her breath, she pushed gently, and the door creaked open just enough for her to see inside. What she witnessed froze her in place. The room was warmly decorated, with children's toys scattered on the carpet and framed photographs adorning the walls. In each picture, Omar appeared not as the groom she had just married, but as a smiling husband and father. Beside him stood a striking woman, her arm around his waist, and two young children beaming at the camera. Their closeness radiated through every image. The realization hit Aisha with crushing force. Her marriage was not a new beginning, but an intrusion into a life already built. The man she believed was her partner had concealed an entire family beneath her feet, and on her wedding night, she had stumbled into the truth she was never meant to find. Aisha stood frozen, staring at the photographs that revealed the life her husband had hidden. The woman in the images was elegant, dressed in flowing gowns, her beauty undeniable but shadowed by something deeper in her eyes. This was Mariam, Omar's first wife, The person who had occupied the space Aisha believed was hers alone. The discovery cut into her like glass, leaving her breathless and disoriented. Each photograph told a story of happiness, of milestones shared, of children growing up under the watchful gaze of a father who had never spoken of them. To the outside world, Omar was a man of honor and wealth, but here was evidence of a double life meticulously concealed. The room itself looked lived in, not abandoned or forgotten. A scarf was draped carelessly over a chair, the faint scent of perfume lingering in the air, and children's shoes were neatly placed beside the bed. This was not a relic of the past, but the presence of a family existing within the same walls she now called home. The thought made her chest tighten. The mansion she had entered as a bride was already someone else's world. As the weight of betrayal pressed down, she felt her vision blur with a mix of anger and disbelief. Every moment of her wedding, every promise made that day, had been nothing but a veil covering lies. She realized now why Omar avoided questions about his life, why he never welcomed visitors beyond the gates. He had been hiding not just wealth or secrets of business, but flesh and blood, another wife, another life. Aisha's fairy tale had turned into a cruel illusion, and with that realization, her innocence was gone forever. The weight of betrayal grew heavier with every passing minute. Aisha returned to her suite, but the opulent room now felt suffocating, its beauty mocking the storm inside her. The roses scattered across the bed, once symbols of romance, now appeared lifeless and hollow. She stared at the golden key still in her hand, realizing it had not been a gift of trust but a cruel doorway to deception. Rage boiled beneath her skin, colliding with waves of humiliation. She thought of her family, of the pride in their eyes as they watched her wed a man they believed would cherish her. How could she ever face them, knowing everything had been built on lies? She walked to the window, looking out at the quiet streets of London below. Cars moved silently, streetlights glowed faintly, and the city slept in peace. Yet within her, a tempest raged. She replayed every moment of the wedding. The whispers about Omar's mystery, his careful avoidance of personal questions, the strange sense of distance in his eyes. It all made sense now. He had crafted an illusion for her, and she had fallen into it blindly. The sound of distant laughter from the hidden room still echoed in her memory, cutting deeper each time she thought of it. She wondered how many others knew, if the staff of the house lived complicit in silence, if the guests who praised the marriage had been blinded by luxury, as she once was. Her fairy tale had been poisoned, and the night that should have been the happiest of her life had transformed into a cruel stage for betrayal. In that moment, love twisted into something darker, and the seeds of disaster were quietly taking root inside her heart. As the night dragged into the early hours, Aisha found herself wandering the endless halls of the mansion, her thoughts a whirlwind of betrayal and despair. The silence of the house pressed in on her, broken only by the faint ticking of clocks hidden in shadowed corners. Every polished surface, every gleaming chandelier, every velvet curtain seemed to mock her, reminders that she was nothing more than a guest in a place already belonging to another. Her mind churned with questions she could not silence. Why had Omar chosen her if he already had a family? Was she a replacement, a distraction, or simply another possession added to his collection of wealth and status? The fury building inside her made it impossible to rest. She moved aimlessly from room to room, the golden key still clutched tightly in her palm like an unwanted curse. Her eyes burned with sleeplessness, her heart thundering with a rhythm that refused to settle. The longer she paced, the more she felt caged, trapped inside a story she had never agreed to live. Each step echoed louder than the last, each reflection in the mansion's mirrors showing her a woman she no longer recognized. By the time the moonlight shifted across the floor, her exhaustion had turned into something raw and dangerous. She realized she could not remain silent, yet the thought of speaking the truth felt unbearable. To confront Omar meant facing more lies, and to stay quiet meant living in humiliation. Either choice was a prison. The rage she carried grew sharper, heavier, until it felt as though it demanded an outlet. In those dark corridors, love had already been buried, replaced by something far more destructive, and it was only a matter of time before it broke free. The night crept toward dawn when Omar finally returned to the suite. His presence filled the room with a heavy silence, and though no words passed between them, the tension was suffocating. Aisha stood rigid, her body trembling as her thoughts collided violently with the sight of him. The man she had once admired now appeared as a stranger, his face carrying the same polished calm that had fooled her, but beneath it she could see the shadows of secrets that had destroyed her trust. The silence between them was louder than any argument could have been, a silence weighted with betrayal, fury, and unspoken truths. Omar moved with the confidence of someone who believed his world was still intact, unaware of the discovery his bride had made. Aisha's eyes followed him, each movement stirring the rage she had tried to contain. She saw him not as a husband, but as an architect of deception, the reason her dreams had collapsed in a single night. The air between them grew colder, the walls of the suite pressing in as though the house itself knew what was about to unfold. Her chest tightened, breaths coming faster, every memory of the hidden photographs and children's toys flashing like cruel reminders. The laughter she had overheard echoed inside her skull, merging with the pounding of her heart. She felt herself standing at the edge of something irreversible, a line that once crossed could never be undone. The confrontation was wordless, fueled not by shouting, but by raw emotion too heavy to express aloud. Within that silence, violence brewed. The fragile thread holding her restraint began to snap, and the wedding night transformed into the prelude of a tragedy neither could escape. The hours of silence finally reached their breaking point. In the grand suite, where roses had been laid out with care and silk drapes flowed in the cool night air, the atmosphere shifted into something darker. The weight of betrayal pressed down on Aisha until it seemed unbearable, and the fury inside her demanded release. What followed was sudden, brutal, and irreversible. The violence that erupted in that room was not planned, but born from the storm of humiliation and rage that had consumed her since the moment she discovered Omar's secret. By the time it ended, the floor that had been decorated with petals and lace was stained with blood, the scene transformed from a chamber of celebration into one of horror. Omar lay lifeless, his body sprawled across the bed that hours earlier had symbolized a new beginning. The carefully arranged details of the wedding night, candles still flickering, champagne glasses untouched, the delicate veil discarded nearby, were now grotesque reminders of how quickly beauty could collapse into ruin. The mansion's silence grew heavier, pressing in on Aisha as she stood frozen, the enormity of what she had done sinking in. The truth was undeniable. The fairy tale had ended in tragedy before it even had the chance to begin. All the wealth, the luxury, the promises of happiness had dissolved in an instant. What remained was the body of a man who had deceived her, and a bride who had crossed a line she could never return from. Outside, the city of London carried on, unaware of the crime that had unfolded behind closed doors. Inside, the walls of the mansion now held a secret that could never be erased, and the wedding night was forever marked as the night of murder. When the sun finally rose over London, the mansion was no longer a place of celebration but a sealed crime scene. The silence of the estate was shattered by the arrival of flashing blue lights and the heavy footsteps of officers moving quickly through its halls. News of the groom's death had spread rapidly, drawing investigators determined to uncover what had happened in the hours following the lavish wedding. The sight that greeted them in the master suite was stark and chilling. Blood on silk sheets, a lifeless body sprawled across a bed decorated with roses, and a bride in shock, her gown stained and her eyes hollow. Detectives began their work with precision, cataloging every detail. The golden key was found clutched in Aisha's hand, its ornate design leading them directly to the hidden passage below. What they uncovered shocked even the most seasoned officers. Behind the secret door lay rooms that spoke of an entirely different life, one filled with photographs, toys, and belongings of a family few had known existed. Omar's double life, carefully guarded for years, was now laid bare in a single morning. Neighbors were questioned, though most admitted they had never seen much beyond the high gates and tinted windows of the mansion. Staff members spoke hesitantly, some confessing they had long suspected secrets but feared the consequences of speaking out. To the public, the story of wealth, betrayal, and sudden death seemed almost unreal, yet the evidence was impossible to deny. The fairy tale wedding had transformed into a headline-grabbing crime. and the bride who had once been celebrated as fortunate was now viewed as the central figure in a tragedy that had shocked the city. The courtroom became the final stage where the shocking story unfolded in full. Cameras flashed as Aisha was led inside, her once celebrated bridal gown replaced with the stark uniform of an accused killer. The case drew international attention, not just for the crime itself, but for the layers of deceit and betrayal it revealed. Prosecutors laid out the evidence in painstaking detail: the golden key, the hidden passage, the photographs of the secret family, and the brutal scene that ended a wedding night in blood. For many, it was difficult to comprehend how a day of luxury and love had collapsed into violence so quickly. Yet it was Mariam, Omar's first wife, who brought the most unsettling twist to the proceedings. Taking the stand with a quiet, almost resigned demeanor, she admitted she had long known of her husband's plans to bring another woman into their lives. There were whispers that she may have left the passage door unlocked intentionally, allowing Aisha to stumble upon the truth on that fateful night. Whether her actions were driven by despair, jealousy, or a calculated desire to expose Omar, no one could ever say with certainty. The jury wrestled not only with the facts of the crime, but with the layers of manipulation and secrecy that had led to it. In the end, one fact was beyond dispute. The marriage had been doomed from the start, built upon deception so deep it could never survive. A celebration that had promised happiness became a cautionary tale of lies, betrayal, and tragedy. The fairy tale wedding that dazzled London would forever be remembered, not for its beauty, but as the night when love turned into murder.